back into the garage. 3-minute Thursday. The seasons are changing and so are the snowmobiles for me. For me, now I'm starting to think about jumping. This snowmobile is pretty short. It's 146, 850 Khaos. And I just want to go over some of the basic setup things that I'm going to do to this snowmobile as opposed to what I would do on my mountain, my big mountain sled or my tree riding sled. The setups are completely different. They both can kind of do the same thing, but for me this sled is built specifically to go in the air, and the settings are going to be completely different. Starting with the high speed clickers, I'm 6 clicks in from all the way open on the high speed, the red dial, and I'm 12 clicks in from open on the low speed. That gives me a couple of clicks of adjustment before I'm fully closed out and fully stiff on the compression of that shock. The reason that I run the ski shock so stiff is because it's the first thing on the front of the snowmobile that has any sort of impact or inertia placed into the chassis. And for me, I want to have a really rigid front end, so the front end stays high up into the stroke and most of the weight gets transferred into the rear end. We'll talk about that next. Okay, so in the center track shock, I'm 6 clicks in on the high speed, so the red knob, and I'm 8 clicks in on the low speed, which is the black knob. And the reason that I go so stiff on that center track shock is, much like the ski shocks, this is the first shock that has any sort of impact in part of the rear skid. And so I want that to take the brunt of the impact and let this rear track shock be the dampening. So in the rear track shock, I'm 8 clicks in on the high speed, the red knob, and I'm 10 clicks in on the low speed with the black knob. And that rear shock is almost maxed out. And with the spring preload, I have 3/4 of an inch spring preload on this rear spring. And I use that almost as my rebound adjustment. So if I find that the back end is kind of carrying low over the jumps, I'll add more spring preload to the shock to try and get the sled to pop up into the air more efficiently. So with the Rocks anchor pads, it helps my feet become one with the snowmobile. It helps my body stay glued to the snowmobile. So, you know, when I'm upside down or if I'm trying to get the sled higher up into the air, I can pinch the tunnel with my ankle and I can actually drag my foot up the side of the pad, and that'll bring the entire snowmobile up into my body, and it'll make me feel like I'm connected to the snowmobile itself. All right, now for the steering system on this 146 Khaos. I went with the Specialty Motorsports lay-down post-forward kit. It steers much like a snowcross race sled does. I paired it with a pair of CFR Turcotte Signature Series bars on a 2-inch Nux riser. And you know, this setup for me gives me a nice square stance over top of the snowmobile. The Specialty post-forward kit puts me almost 6 inches farther forward on the snowmobile in total. And it gets me, with my head and my shoulders, up over the central of the mass of the snowmobile. And this just helps when I'm upside down, I'm doing 270s, or if I'm doing whips, or if I want to do a backflip. You know, the geometry for me for jumping, this is the only way to go. So that's it for this week's video. This was the 146 Khaos. I have this one set up for springtime jumping and flipping and just overall good times. So if you guys thought this video was helpful, make sure you hit the like button, tell your friends, go subscribe, and we'll see you next week.